Navigating an SAP transformation? We get it. By day, we work hands-on with people like you across the globe. By night, we share what actually works. Welcome to Transformation Every Day with Alexander Greb and Johannes Languth, where your complex transformation becomes clear, actionable, and achievable.
Welcome to another episode of Transformation Every Day. I'm Alexander Greb, and today we are diving into the unseen algorithms shaping our daily lives. My guest is Professor Marek Kowalkiewicz, innovator, academic, and sharp mind when it comes to AI, curiosity, and the future of work. From your coffee choices to business decisions and your LinkedIn reach, algorithms are everywhere. Marek and I explore how AI isn't just automating tasks, it's transforming entire systems. We talk about why consultants need to team up with AI, education and digital literacy are more critical than ever, and how enterprises and humans should approach AI to gain value and minimize risks. So grab a drink, get comfortable, and let's rethink what AI means for business, work, and the world around us. This is Transformation Every Day. Let's jump in. One question is, how close do you still follow what's happening within the SAP world?
I not as close as I used to. So as you know, I was an SAP mentor for a few years, and obviously I was all across everything. But you know, I have so many friends in the SAP ecosystem. I spend a bit of time on LinkedIn, so I get those updates, right? I know what's happening just because of that. So yeah, I'm a passive recipient of updates on SAP now.
That's good. And what I also really enjoyed was your sentence that I'm on journey, but I have a very good microphone with me, which is not surprise because some people take their books, and definitely people like you are taking good microphones with them on the journey.
This is funny because I know people make jokes of people like me because I try to travel with carry-on only, but that's because on those long flights from Australia and so on, you end up spending so much time waiting for your suitcases and so on. But I'm not one of those guys who like bring a huge suitcase on board. I just have a backpack, literally. So I know exactly how many grams this microphone weighs because I need to keep like 7 kilograms, right? So I have this weird things that I do. This is one of them. Yeah.
Perfect. And we're recording Transformation Every Day. Great to have you here. We have a special guest today, Professor Marek Kowalkiewicz. I hope I pronounced that right.
It's a proper
Perfect.
European pronunciation. Yes.
Perfect. Awesome. And we talk today about the economy of algorithms, how it really makes our life different. Because if there's a craze, definitely it's AI algorithms. And algorithm is not only that stupid LinkedIn algorithm who after the last update runs our post dry. Maybe you're experiencing something similar, but we also, of course, no.
Tell me what happened.
No, not happened. So everybody's arguing at the moment that the LinkedIn algorithm is, more or less sucking the juice out of reach at the moment.
Okay. Yeah.
So reach is going down, engagement is going down, and so on. How's your experience there?
Look, I mean, I noticed things like this, and I noticed that I get frustrated about it. So I decided to try not to pay too much attention to it. And so, but yeah, you're right. When I looked at my LinkedIn today, it was like, oh, there's actually fewer views than I'm usually seeing. Having said that, about 2 or 3 weeks ago, I posted a thing that got like 250,000 views, which like in my world, in what I do, this is like almost like a year's, or maybe I'm exaggerating, but almost like a year's reach of everything else that I do. But I won't tell you what it was because I know you'll be asking about things that that sort of trigger people that I talk about. I'll tell you about it then, right? But yeah, it's all over the place, right? Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, and the question is, do you allow yourself to be to be sort of sad or frustrated when an algorithm thinks you're not cool or doesn't want to promote you. But you're right, sir. Back to your point, this is just one type of algorithms. Algorithms are so much more than social media, decisions.
Yeah, but definitely they, as you said, they are already able to influence our emotions and our moods and how we start into the day when we see like, just three
Yeah,
digits responses to
and it's not that LinkedIn developers were planning for
something.
it, right? It just happened, and this is also a fascinating thing about our world of algorithmic agents all around us. They might have a particular goal to achieve, but there's so many unintended consequences, and sometimes they're more impactful than their actual goal.
Where do you think are our lives in areas influenced by algorithms where maybe we do not actually realize it as much as with the LinkedIn algorithms?
Oh, look, I mean, it's impacted everything right now. I mean, so let's just sort of take a step back. An algorithm is just a set of instructions for a machine
Mhm.
to follow, right? So not just social media algorithms, but every single one. Traffic lights that we wait at and get frustrated why red is on for so long. They're controlled by algorithms. Granted, this like most of them are still probably in the 80s when it comes to the sort of the advancement of those algorithms. Very very simple, very simple approaches, but they are becoming more and more sophisticated. So everything from us traveling through cities, our cars. My car keeps me within my lane if I sort of swerve a bit too much, right? So they're really kind of moderating our behavior, and that's just everywhere, right? You use your computer, you spend time on a particular app for a bit too long, you might get a pop-up. You go to a retail store, even the placement of products on shelves, whether it's on your right or on your left, on your eye level or somewhere else, this will be algorithmically optimized. It's fascinating in the retail world. I spoke to a lot of people from that industry. They have algorithms that take weather forecasts as input. When you think about it, makes sense, right? If sun comes out 5 times a year in Germany, right? They'll bring
Four times.
they'll bring out beers in front of the stores and all those
Yeah.
barbecue setups and so on. So it's obviously impacting our decisions everywhere. You give me an area of our life, I'll tell you, how algorithms are impacting it. But the interesting part is a lot of those algorithms are impacting our lives very subtly. We don't even realize, we don't even notice them, and it's kind of both good and bad. Good because, like, the interface is very smooth. Bad, uh, we think we're in charge, but in reality we're often slaves to an algorithm.
Now at the moment, everybody, of course, is talking about AI. And there are, of course, if you compare algorithms and AI, there are certain things which are the same. There are certain things which are differing. Some folks even may say that AI may be the more independent version of algorithms. What's your spin on that?
Well, look, I mean, ultimately, everything here is an algorithm. Everything that we talk about, it's still a set of instructions. It's just uh, And when we say AI, let's talk about AI kind of the 21st century, or of 2025, 2024. Back in when I started teaching AI, in I think it was 2002, even things like Google's PageRank algorithm were considered AI. Today, we probably don't think about it as AI. It's just like a graph optimization algorithm, which is not exactly AI the way we understand it. The way we understand AI these days is typically systems that are based on artificial neural networks, sort of machine learning, deep learning, and obviously we go into all the fancy things like transformers, GPTs, so generative pre-trained transformers, and so on. Uh, the uniqueness of the AI, the way we understand it right now, is that practically not a single AI algorithm is written by a human. those algorithms are trained, right? And I get it. We have a mixed group of people listening to this podcast. So for those of you being more technical, please bear with me, right? For those of you a bit less technical, that's what I'm doing here. Those AI algorithms are not written; they are trained. What it means is they're sort of being given inputs like, hey, here's a set of images, right? And then they're given outputs, and hey, these are labels that we put on those images, or the text that we extracted from those images. And then we train them, and we train the algorithm and say, now you figure out how to configure yourself internally so that whenever you get those images, you also spit out those things that we showed you as an output, right? It takes huge amounts of computation. It takes a lot of time to do it, but turns out with all the research and scientific advances of today and all the computing power that we have access to, it actually becomes possible. Right back 20, 25 years ago, we could do things like this with optical character recognition, relatively simple tasks. I could, recognize a digit, provided I sort of gave that digit in a sort of, as a nice picture to the computer. That was 25 years ago. These days, look, I don't even have to tell you, we have now systems that can create moving videos with audio that are
Yeah.
practically indistinguishable from what real world creators would do. So that's still AI, that's still algorithms. Not a single software developer was writing code to say like, hey, in order to create this video, make sure you do this, you do that.
Yeah.
No, just all algorithms creating themselves, which is mind-blowing.
hmm But where do you think our understanding of AI and algorithms may be flawed? Where are we? Since now AI is either seen by some folks as the ultimate threat, yeah,
Yeah,
which will probably kill us
yeah.
at some time. Others see AI as the new god, well, which is generating things which has nobody seen before, and you get a lot of opinions in between. Where do you think maybe the spot being closest to the truth in all these kinds of black and white?
Oh, look, I have a very, very clear take on this one. I've written a book that has digital minions in a subtitle, and that was my response to people talking about AI being our digital overlords. I, for one, pay respects to our future digital overlords. I think that was what one of the Jeopardy participants said when he lost against IBM's Watson many
Mm,
years ago now. And I listened to it and I thought, like, wait. We have all those algorithms. They seem to be fantastic, but in reality, you leave them alone for a while without sort of human oversight, and disasters happen. They just
mm,
they deliver crazy stuff. They make mistakes and so on. So I thought, like, that's actually like minions, like those yellow creatures from the movie. Uh, they're available 24/7, full of energy. They will always do what you tell them to do. But you look away for a day or two, disasters happen, or they find surprising ways of achieving the results. And so I think that's where we are at the moment. These are not like, if they're going to destroy the world, it's because of their incompetence. All
mhm.
right, because of the lack of the oversight. It's going to be more of a disaster that's caused by lack of competence of those systems rather than a sort of intentional destruction of the world. So, like, I am in the camp where I think, all believe that it's ultimately humans' responsibility to make sure things go well. In a camp where, when we say we have digital agents, it doesn't mean that humans are giving up on their agency when they use them, right? We still need to have our own agency and then use those agents as kind of our subordinates.
So, in a certain way, it's not different with basically any tool or any scientific um, thing that we discovered, yeah, from fire to the atom to things like that.
In a way, yes, you're absolutely right. With two comments, and I'm glad you mentioned fire. First of all, the tool that we sort of created, it's the most unusual tool ever, because like we've built a tool, uh, but we don't fully understand how it works. I'll get to it in a second. And we also don't fully understand what it does. So, with all those large language models and so
Hmm.
on, we're still discovering what their capabilities are. It's like the new age of exploration. There are people who kind of try to figure out now what are they good for. It's like we've created a tool, but there's no manual to that tool. We don't even know where the buttons are, like what buttons to press. It's like people say, like, write this prompt, write that prompt. This is kind of the discovery of the buttons, and we're not really sure what capabilities this tool has. Fire is a fantastic example because, like, in the history of humanity, at some stage humans figured out how to start fire, right? And then they started using it. But they didn't fully understand the properties, the kind of the chemical, physical properties of fire. It was just like a tool that they were using. And so, surprisingly, with the newest large language models, the deep learning algorithms that power all those systems, we kind of know what they're made of, right? Those artificial neural networks, the transformers, and so on. We understand those architectures quite well. But frankly, we don't fully understand kind of what happens inside them
Hmm.
when they create those very, very impressive outputs. It's kind of like with human brain, right? We could zoom in on a brain, but we don't yet fully understand really what makes us conscious, what kind of makes creative thoughts appear in our brain, right? We're still discovering it. It's kind of this world, like era of discovery for AI systems, which is mind-blowing for all of us who have been around for a while, because that's not what we're used to, right? We computer scientists were building systems when we fully understood them because they were like so easy to understand. Not anymore.
That's a great point. But before we go deeper into it, let's go a step back because there's this sentence I really like that in the end, all that we see and say is in the end just the result of our journeys. What was the journey of Marek? You've been a part of SAP at one point. You've
Yeah.
stepped then
Do you want me
back in a
to?
certain way into academia.
Yeah.
How did that shape you?
Yeah, yeah. I look. I can go get all the way back to, I was born behind the Iron Curtain, in the sort of the communist Poland, in a small town where you just didn't really understand that there was, much world around you. I could watch Danish TV because we're on the coast of the Baltic Sea, black and white and with no sound. That's sort of like PAL, SECAM, all those systems. We don't need to go into details. But
Some Danish cinema, by the way, is still like that.
yeah, yeah. But the beautiful thing about Danish movies, they always had subtitles. Even
Mhm.
though I never spoke the Danish, it was still very helpful. So even if there was no sound. Anyways, I was born like, in this small town, but I was always very, very curious. And when I was a teenager, the Berlin Wall fell. Poland had its first independent elections in 1989, and so on. And the world sort of opened up, and it suddenly became much easier to travel, and I was just curious, and so I started traveling all around the place. I did my university in Poland, but even while I was doing my university in Poland, I was traveling to places like Australia. The stock market in Poland was very, very good. Even as a student back then, I could sort of make enough money to pay for my travels, which was so cool. And one day I thought, wouldn't it be great to move to a place like Australia? But I decided to do my university education in Poland. I did my PhD in Poland. While I was doing it, I did an internship with SAP in Brisbane, in Australia. Um, and so they got to know me. I was doing some pretty cool things back then with SAP and also Microsoft research in China, things related to information retrieval, content extraction, and so when I finished my PhD, literally a week later, I was already on the plane with my wife. We moved to Australia because SAP pretty much hired me immediately after I finished my PhD. I spent a few years in Australia. Then I moved to Singapore, where I was a member of a founding team of the machine learning, SAP's machine learning app lab in Singapore. So there were a few people. I was one of the research managers for the team. Right now, this SAP machine learning lab is huge, right? I don't know what numbers there are in Singapore, but I'm guessing easily over 100
Yeah.
researchers at the moment.
Hmm.
So I'm very, very proud of it. Obviously, I don't have any links to it anymore, but I'm glad to be one of those who were actually literally cutting the ribbon of this lab back in 2012. A few years later, I moved to California to SAP Labs in Palo Alto, where I moved from my initial focus. So back in Brisbane, Australia, and Singapore, I was part of SAP Research. In Palo Alto, I moved to a group called Development Culture under Ann Hardy, and I was responsible for a couple of years for this largest developer kickoff meeting, DCOM, at
Hmm.
SAP. I was head of content and strategy globally for that, which was fascinating, but also massively draining. It was a lot of work, fantastic people, super exhausting. Loved it, but at some stage I decided that it was a bit too much for me, and that's when I jumped into academia. That was about 10 years ago. I joined QUT in Brisbane as PwC chair in digital economy. I was a industry chair of PwC for about 5 years, and then after that, I became an independent chair professor within QUT, and that's what I've been doing so far. I've always been kind of sitting on a fence between business and software development. My claim to fame at SAP, the very first SAP's iPhone app came from my tiny team of about 4 people. So, we were very, very proud. We might have broken a few rules at SAP to speed
Which is
up.
necessary sometimes.
Yeah, to speed up the deployment of this or the launch of it.
Mm.
Some lawyers threatened to fire me. I was not fired from SAP. It was a fun time.
Yeah, but the interesting thing is that the SAP history and the history of SAP successes is full of people going rogue. Yeah,
You have to.
and you have to so many cases, yeah, because um, corporate guardrails are seldom engaging in entrepreneurial spirit and innovation. Yeah, so this is just necessary in
Yeah,
many
yeah,
cases.
absolutely. And look, I've been always saying this. It's not just breaking the rules, but you have to be responsible about it, right? So of
Yeah,
course, it's easy to break the rules and do whatever, right? But
yeah,
no, it's more like, look, I have done my analysis. I've spoken to a lot of people. The rule is stupid. I'm going to ignore it. But I thought a lot about it,
yeah.
right? Like I'm not doing something reckless, right? I'm just doing something for the good of the corporation, and that's what we were
Yeah.
doing there. Yeah.
And your topics have become huge. I think anybody who was last week in Orlando or this week in Madrid was not at least 50 times per minute hearing the word AI and
Yeah.
everything surrounding that. So it really has moved into the central, not only of SAP strategy, but also, of course, what our customers and what the adopters are thinking about. Especially at the moment when AI is not just seen as a, let's say, marketing gimmick, which is supposed to push your stocks up, but when now there's a thorough application landscape and a thorough portfolio based on applications, data, and AI, which is supposed to bring us forward and to make our customers more efficient and effective. Are we too optimistic by thinking that technology like be it Joule or whatever is realistically able to transform productivity? Or do you think that we are now really at the beginning or maybe even in the mid of a huge step that will bring us forward?
Look, this is a massive transformation at the moment, and there's probably a lot of people who think about AI as just this, sprinkling on top of the applications. Let's
Yeah.
add some AI here, let's add some AI there. We need to think about it differently, and I'm not shy of this comparison. It's a bit like industrial revolution and the introduction of the electric motor. Initially, in factories, electric motors were put in place where the shaft of the steam engine
Hmm.
was and sort of bringing that uh, movement into the factory, right? So the steam engine was replaced by electric motor. Yeah, sure. Why not? But
Hmm.
then people realize, hey, you don't really need that shaft anymore. You could have tiny electric motors on every desk,
Yeah.
and in every other areas and so on. And that led to a complete redesign of factories, redesign of work, redesign of processes, and so on and so on. And so we're not there yet when it comes to AI, but we will have to get to that point. We're still using AI as a replacement, right? It's like, oh, I had a human doing, I don't know, customer interactions. I'm gonna deploy a chatbot now to do
Hmm.
customer interactions. This is the equivalent of replacing a steam engine shaft with an electric motor shaft. That's like, Jesus, this is boring, right? It's like, so let,
And you know what you're talking about that way, to be honest, because you were one of the first one who let, sorry to say that, as far as I know and what I've heard, you let your students talk to an AI instead of you. Is that
yeah.
story correct?
Yeah. So that's right, right? But it's like, that's a mirroring of the
Yeah.
of the existing process, right? But we need to do better than that. It's really like it's a massive opportunity to
Hmm.
rethink everything that's happening, right? And
Yeah.
we've had it before with internet as well, right?
Hmm.
There were, I don't know, travel booking processes. They look very different right now. They're much more so flexible. They're much more real time than they used to be. Back in the olden days, we would have this one interaction with travel agent. We'd have to go there, set everything up, and so on. These days, it's just like so much more flexible. Those processes are much smaller, in all sorts of places. So yeah, internet has already led this change of a lot of processes, but we're going to see much more. I just finished a yesterday a bigger session with one of the largest banks in Poland, and we talked about those completely new ways of interacting with
Hmm.
customers and completely new. Not just channels, but like styles of interactions, right? What
Yeah.
no one yet talks about is uh, could my chatbot be a interaction channel with my bank, right? And with
Hmm.
companies like Anthropic deploying MCP, Model Control Protocol, which allows those chatbots to talk directly to those enterprise systems, retrieve
Yeah.
data, send data to them, and so on. That just enables completely new ways of doing things. We just don't know what they are at the moment. In the very same way,
Hmm.
people have no idea how a new factory would look when they
Yeah.
first saw an electric motor.
You're absolutely right in that. And I remember, for example, a few days ago, I saw at Sapphire a demo where somebody was talking about, look, that's Joule doing now in my interaction with the system. And what he did was he was entering what he was looking for into Joule, like a word like orders. And saw that as an innovation where I, to be honest, that remembered me too much of, okay, instead of a transaction, he's now entering a question, which is in many cases not so much of a difference. So we still have what you were mentioning with the electric motor in the drive shaft of
Yeah,
something, where still the legacy system is below that. So
yeah,
we're talking in a way still of optimizing. We're optimizing via AI. We are not really executing with AI.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Do you see where this change from optimizing to execution? Are there areas where you see like, okay, there there's the area where this happens first. If you want to see what working looks like in 5 years, look into that area.
Yeah, that's a good one. I think we're still trying to find those really strong use cases, those really strong examples. Uh, it's hard for me to give you a very precise answer to this question, but I'll try to uh, give you a sort of an indication of how I find answers to this question. I spend a lot of time on Reddit. I spend a lot of time on YouTube, uh, looking for people who do things differently. There's this guy that I found on YouTube called Butter Boy Nova. All he does is deploys bots to buy things for him. He's a
Mhm.
sneakerhead, right? So a person who buys sneakers, sports shoes, and resells them for profit. But he doesn't really buy them, those shoes himself. He has those bots. They are called AIO, all-in-one bots. So bots that can go to a retailer webpage, find a particular shoe, add it to a shopping cart, check out, get it delivered, all in one. And so he's like I told you about digital minions. He's like a digital minion master, a guy who just has a tiny army of algorithms, tiny army of agents, and they work for him. So I think this is an example, right? This is like not an example from a typical corporate world. This is an
Mhm.
example from this edge of innovation, where the guy is not bound by any organizational hierarchies, on organizational structures, business models. He just realized there's this beautiful new opportunity. And you know what? Soon we'll see this innovation from the edges coming back to organizations, and we'll see organizations deploying those kind of armies of bots to do
Mhm.
things. I just heard 2 days ago. Okay, so I think I'm getting there. 2 days ago, I think Amazon launched this new offer. If I remember correctly, it's called Buy for You.
Mhm.
And this is in the US, where Amazon, if they don't have a product that you're after, they will deploy some agents to shop from other places, and then kind of drop ship them to you, right?
Mhm.
So this is exactly what Border Boy Nova does. Now it's being done by a corporate organization. So, yep, that's it, right? Look for those unusual cases, usually being done outside of organizations by people who do not have any legacy systems that they have to worry about, and then start seeing them being implemented in more traditional organizations.
Fully agree with you there, because that's what we in our pre-conversation were discussing. I think we are at the moment still in that AI 1.0 world, yeah, where similar to Web 1.0, you are um, trying to find out, okay, what's really the future of this kind of new topic. And of course, you also find many stupid things, yeah, like LinkedIn pictures with me and other people in blister boxes, as a toy, for example.
Yeah.
But there will also be more and more things coming up which actually make sense. So that will then accelerate that thing, which at the moment is maybe happening a little bit with a lot of thrust but no vector. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, where else do you see those areas where we are at least in something like a 2.0 level already?
In addition to those examples, right?
Exactly.
Um,
Or maybe where we fail to do that. Things where we said, like, okay, maybe AI would help me in a certain area, but then we found out, okay, we are not yet that far.
Yeah. Uh, it's a fascinating. Look, I'll get back to those examples of
Mhm.
individuals. I think individuals are the best at identifying those new use cases. Um, Large corporations are completely uh, 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 s- worried, shocked by this new phenomenon of people using AI to help them in recruitment.
Uh-huh.
So, job interviews, I could have my phone right next to me while I'm chatting with you, imagining this is a job recruitment interview, and then my phone having an agent suggests exactly how I should be responding. Come to think of it, I should have done it for this interview, right? So I'd have like want to give me points, to those questions. But that's already, absolutely amazing. We see that in education as well. Students are completely, out innovating education at the moment, coming up with absolutely amazing ways of using generative AI to help them with their, assessments. Pay attention to my language here, right? I work for a university. Maybe I should be worried. No, I'm excited, right? That those students are so creative. Of course, there are, from the educator's perspective, we have those moments where we say like, okay, there are moments where you have to think about things for yourself and think more critically. But education definitely happening, the sort of individual support, uh, it, those are, I think, the most innovative areas. Large organizations, no, they're a bit like dinosaurs still.
You remember in the beginning of our conversation here, we talked about the LinkedIn algorithm, which is at
Yeah.
the moment frustrating a lot of people. Coming and connecting that to what you said right now, do you think that there may be already something happening, like where the algorithm and the AI does not really serve us, but in a certain way by trying to work out how we can hack the LinkedIn algorithm and get our numbers back up again, that we serve algorithms instead of them?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. We think we're prompting those
Yeah,
algorithms, right? We
but
are
they
being
prompt us.
prompted by
Yeah.
them. We're absolutely being prompted by them. It makes a lot of sense, right? That's exactly what those corporations are trying to achieve. The obvious example that almost everyone knows about, was when YouTube decided to, come up with an algorithm for next video recommendations, where the utility function for those algorithms, or the kind of the reward for those algorithms, was, if the user stayed for longer and watched more
Yeah.
videos, then they would get rewarded, right? And suddenly we became prompt recipients when watching YouTube's, and those prompts, as you know, as many listeners know, became increasingly radical, right? Uh, it happens everywhere, in every single space. So we think we're users. In many cases, we're just a product that's using those systems.
How do we get the initiative back when we are at the moment already serving algorithms? And I tell you why I asked this question. Um, since we want to innovate and we still want to serve as the major trigger of innovation, because we have the interaction with customers, we have the let's say the ideas in our daily business life, on where we could make things better in a certain way where the AI and algorithms are not really able to be there. How do we, with working with AI and algorithms, engage better with them than doing this now? Being in, some of us are in certain governmental restrictions, yeah, because their industry says like, okay, I forbid you to take AI or algorithm too much in considerations when doing A and Z, while others may just say like, okay, this is an industry where adoption is so slow, yeah, that we will have to find easier, more easy approach methods to get more horsepower to the street.
Yeah, yeah. Look, I think everything comes down to literacy, as in
Mm.
AI literacy, technical literacy. With the internet and social media and algorithms, we got hold of a lot of those issues, right? I mean, not to say that there are no issues with social media and so on. But we know how to address them. There are now regulations that control access. I live in Australia, where young kids. I think the newest legislation will stop young kids, or like up to 16-year-olds, from using social media. Right?
Hmm.
Whether it's good or bad, different story, but it sort of comes from an increased literacy, an increased understanding, an ongoing conversation, and we're lacking that when it comes to AI at the moment. A lot of people, whenever they say AI, they use this as a word, as a synonym for magic.
Hmm.
And whenever you use a synonym of magic, you allow yourself to say, look, I don't know how it works, it kind of somehow works, let it do its thing. But we have to think a bit more critically, and we have to understand what might be happening. Those of us who spend a bit more time with this, we're seeing those worrying trends in AI appearing at the moment. I see some, I won't say a lot, but I do see some research now on increasing engagement of chatbot users, and research by sponsored by corporations, where they try to figure out how to keep users hooked to chatbots. That sounds exactly like what we've seen in the social media world. uh, I see my job as a job of someone who talks about it and makes sure that people starts to understand it. The more people start to understand it, the more we can have those conversations which will shape the future of the technology. So one thing that we should all be aware of, whether we're an individual or a small business, we still get a lot to say when it comes to shaping the future of the technology, when we join forces and work with legislators and so on. It's not just Silicon Valley that shapes our future.
Concerning literacy, something interesting quite often comes up when looking at your work, and this is something called research innovation sprints,
Yeah.
which is, in my opinion, quite interesting concept where you were pioneering. I think it was 30 days. Yeah,
Yeah.
this kind of short sprints, similar like in agile developments, where you pushed for quicker outcomes of innovation research. Do you think that adopting something like that in business life can, since it's much easier digestible, can it improve literacy in that way and also enhance adoption of this kind of new technologies?
Yeah, it does. Actually, it does. So it's not even an opinion. I know it does. So research innovation sprints are 30-day research projects that I pioneered almost 10 years ago now, when I joined Queensland University of Technology. I moved there from Silicon Valley, from Palo Alto Labs of SAP. At Palo Alto Labs at SAP, we worked a lot with D-School at Stanford, and design thinking was the way we were thinking, right? This was just a natural way for us. And so when I joined the university, the first thing I told my team, I said, look, typical academic research is inaccessible to industry. Industry does not understand the timelines. It doesn't really know how to work with universities. We need to change that. I said, we're going to make sure we don't offer a project of research or a process of research, but we offer a product of research, a product that has a box, that has a price tag, a kind of a description on the box. That was exactly kind of the thinking we had back then in Palo Alto. And a something that's extremely easy for industry to understand. Pretty much like it should look, smell, and maybe even cost like a consultancy, but still be a proper research project. We initially tried Google's sprint of, I think, 5 or 10 days. We failed badly. You cannot really do proper research in 10 days. And then we started expanding it, and turns out that 6 weeks or 30 working days, is the sweet spot where with a lot of hard work, but pretty much with every sprint that we run, you can deliver good quality research. Since then, we've delivered maybe 60 or so such sprints. We deliver them in parallel. We never run them, as a sequence. We never run them
Mhm.
in parallel. And so now back to your question, we've already started doing sprints where we focus on this digital/AI literacy of organizations, and they love it. And funny thing, and that came to me as a surprise, I have to admit. One organization came to me and said, Marek, we love your sprints because they also instill a sense of urgency and focus on our end. So I always thought that I'm just fixing the problems of the university, right? Like that we need to be focused and so on. But those clients came to us and said, like, look, we were always so unfocused, but when we engage with you, we know we have only 6 weeks. We need to
Yeah.
put the right people on it and stay focused. So we've done a lot of that. And this is like we have different flavors of sprints. There's like a service sprint, process sprint, strategy sprint. Kind of, I think the names suggest what we focus on. And now we're developing this new model, which is called an AI sprint, which is like a scan of an organization to understand opportunities and then deliver roadmaps for deployment. That's already, really bridging that gap or shortening that gap and improving the literacy of organizations.
Thinking about that, this addresses quite a huge topic that we have since years in the SAP consulting business, where we, of course, talk a lot about that, for example, organizations need to adapt quicker. Cloud technology have to adapt quicker, the move from ECC to S/4HANA and so on. And everything is always covered in extremely long analysis projects in the beginning, where for years and years and years, adopters and customers try to get even more into depth, try to find out, are there any difference to the way I work now, and so on and so on, leading to consultants, of course, thinking the same way. Yeah, like we always have to do that kind of huge step and that huge value gain immediately, because I know the customer does one project maybe every 3 years, and as such, of course, we have to jump very high to justify our engagement in that area.
Yeah.
Do you think that working in plateaus, for example, or in sprints, you may call it, yeah, because I think plateau and sprints, they are different names for probably similar things, is definitely one of the most important new ways of thinking that consultants and their organizations have to move to?
I would say so. I mean, it has worked for me. So obviously, I'm biased, right? But I think this approach of, heads down, stay focused for 6 weeks, do the thing, right? We've never ever gone over the time, right? So that's really just like we're religious about those 6 weeks, right? We had a few sprints where we said that's very complex. We're gonna give ourselves 8 weeks, but most of them are 6 weeks, and so we were anticipating in a couple of sprints that it might be too hard for us, so we gave ourselves the buffer. But you kind of heads down, stay focused, do the thing. Then there's always the time between sprints, right, where this is the time for things that by design might have some delays, require more time, and this is kind of a really good. A good kind of break in the pace, right? So focus, creative roadmaps, then heads up. Okay, now let's just do things and so on. And the moment we get to a sort of a next stage within a transformation, so like okay, we might need to do another sprint, right? So we have those clients now who come back to us every couple of years and say like okay, we've done what we've planned in those 6 weeks, let's do another sprint for another sort of road mapping. We even recently had one organization that came back to us after 7 years, and they said, that sprint we did 7 years ago, we need exactly the same thing, but right now the world has changed, so we need to do it once again. So I believe that kind of change of uh, uh, pace is extremely important.
So now let's imagine you get offered such a huge amount of money that you cannot refuse. You're pulled into a huge consulting company, and you are asked to reinvent SAP consulting to be absolutely able and adaptable to what's coming up with you in the world of AI, of AI applications, of AI powered applications in the business world. What would be the top three things that you would implement in consulting organizations to, yeah, more or less build the SAP Consultant 2.0, who is fully AI enabled and is fully really being able to enrich his customers with the benefits of algorithms and AI?
Yeah. Okay. So, look, I would start by pretty much mandating that everything that a consultant does is done in conjunction with some form of a large language model partner, right? My team members, they hit all those chatbot usage limits every couple of hours, right? And I ask them how much they use them. Some of them say 50% of my day I spent with those chatbots, right? So it's like it's a sparring partner for everything, right? And what amazing ideas they come up with. We do a lot of empathy in our sprints, right? Engaging with end users, customers, all sorts of empathy. But now they're doing pre-empathy with chatbots, right? So like even before I engage with humans, um, prompt, imagine you're a citizen of Australia, tell me what problems do you have with this and that, organization and so on, right? So that just that kind of that enforcement of the use is very, very important. Secondly, I would make sure that those consultants also understand that technology is not a solution to everything, and really understand that they need to uh, 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 that this is just in a way a tool, and they need to understand the bigger picture. So in my team, um, pretty much the first thing that we do with every single project, with every single organization, we kind of create a pie chart for that organization, all right, and say, this pie chart is your customer, or whoever you work with. And then we draw a tiny slice of that pie chart, and then we say, this is who you are to them in their life. Like
Mm.
you're 5%, you're
Yeah.
3% of your life, of their life,
Mhm.
right? And so we tell them, you need to understand that, right? So you need to understand that whatever we're going to be doing now, for you, if it's like new services and so on, you need to understand your place in your customers' lives, right? So in the same way, I think, I would expect those AI powered consultants to understand the bigger context of, who they're consulting, what's the importance of what they're doing for those organizations, what's the bigger picture, right? So there's like a pie chart within a pie chart within a pie chart. So that understanding is very, very very important. The third one, this is possibly the most surprising one. uh, I always put when we work with a client, I try to have those people from my team who do not understand the industry of the client yet to work with the client. All right. That's our competitive advantage, that we don't really understand the industry that we work with, right? That's the I know you're listening to me and thinking like, what is Marek talking about, right? But but believe me, this works so well. I have a say a customer from, I don't know, timber industry, right? So like cutting trees, slicing trees, selling trees in boxes. We will have somebody who doesn't understand timber industry at all to work on that project, because I know that that person is very curious and they will need to quickly understand the industry. But within the first week of this sort of ramp up, they'll ask questions about this industry that no one in this industry asks anymore, right? Because everyone thinks that they know answers to those questions. And that's our competitive advantage, because those questions are often the most transformative ones, right? So, like those future AI consultants, they need to be extremely good at their processes and how they work, and their curiosity, their thinking, and so on. But ideally, they should also be able to approach every industry with this kind of blank canvas mindset.
That's fantastic. And to be honest, I fully agree. Yeah, because I in the meantime, over 20 years of working in this industry, I've seen so many examples where when experts from the same industry sat together, they were always circling around that kind of "that's the way we always did it" question, and
Yeah.
so on. And nothing really new came into that, because they always found whenever somebody tried to leave that bubble a bit and try to implement or bring something new into it, they find all of them together thousands of reasons why this would not work at all.
They
Yeah,
say we need to think outside the box and so on. Just, yeah,
exactly.
you're in the box. You're in the
You
box.
you you are the box, for
Yeah, you
God's
are
sake.
the box. Just bring somebody from a different box, right? Or with a
Exactly.
different box. Yeah,
Exactly.
absolutely.
But our industry then, and that's a fun thing, and they always prohibit that by saying like, okay, you really need that kind of competence to be able to do successful projects in there. Which, to be honest, I also doubted in a lot of
Well,
ways quite often.
I
Yeah.
mean, I get the point.
Yeah.
My response is it's the meta competence that
Hmm.
matters, right? It's sort of like the
Hmm.
bigger picture, right? Like
Yeah.
literally, I've worked with so many industries that
Hmm.
you won't surprise me with any industry, right? Like, and that's what they love. I can
Hmm.
go to a steel fabrication industry, and I can tell them, hey, I worked with this genomics organization
Hmm.
who had exactly the same problem as you had. This is
Yeah.
how they solved it. So let's now, in Australia we call it lift and shift, right? Let's just lift and shift that.
There's a well-known word
Okay.
in the global SAP industry, and it has some, let's say, some scary connotations to it.
Okay, all right, okay. I don't know that one. That's probably for a different podcast. But yeah. Oh, you're right. You're right. You're right. In SAP deployment, there is a lift and shift as well. That's okay. Forget about it.
Exactly. No worries, no
Cut
worries.
it out.
But
Cut it
it's so great you already answered let's say the closing questions I always do with what kind of opinions do you have about digital transformations that most of other people would disagree with. But since you already answered it without really giving me the chance to question it and to ask it, I would ask you for another opinion that you may have that other people may disagree
So,
in that area.
so there's something that I'm very passionate about that I disagree with, right? So obviously, like uh, 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 by definition, that means that others will disagree with me on that as well. You know how people say like, "Oh, AI will not take your job; it'll be
Hmm.
people who use AI that will take your job," right? I get so frustrated when I hear it because that's a lie in
Okay.
most cases. The reason I say it's a lie is because this way of thinking completely dismisses the fact that AI is a transformative technology that is changing systems. All right. So, uh, in the times of industrial revolutions, like I think it was 1800s. Yesterday, I just saw a photo of that, like at a presentation. Somebody was showing this lady in London who was walking, along the streets in the morning, like 6 a.m. or so, and she had this long straw through which she would shoot tiny rocks or peas into windows of people to wake them up so that they would get to work in time. Those people didn't have alarm clocks back then, so that was a service that was
Hmm.
required, right? This lady wasn't replaced by a lady who had a mechanical straw to
Hmm.
put those peas into windows. No, she got replaced by the system. She was made redundant by the system because someone came up with an idea of an alarm clock and people could afford it. Uh, uh, Switchboard operators in 1980s or before that weren't replaced by switchboard operators who knew how to use technologies, right? That thing was just completely automated and these people became redundant. We're already seeing this with AI. The biggest casualty of this AI transformation at this very moment are people who work with language. unsurprisingly, large language models are really good at language. Who works with language? Translators work with language. Translators get tiny jobs as well as large jobs, but those tiny jobs are sometimes like, I have this web page, I need to translate it to a different language. I need to translate my product descriptions. No one prompts those humans anymore. They can just
Mhm.
go to a chat GPT and get it translated in seconds at a quality that's good enough, right?
Yeah.
So that's already happening, and I'm seeing those translators going out of business. I think the next wave will be coaches, those people who just have a conversation with a manager, give them some ideas. Go to LinkedIn, see how many coaching prompts people share these
Mhm.
days. Tell me
Yeah.
what I'm good at, how could I improve, and so on.
Yeah.
Coaches will be losing customers at all. So, um, yeah, AI will not take your job. Somebody using AI will take your job is a lie. And I have a very different perspective on this one. And I think a lot of people might be still disagreeing with me, but I'm pretty convinced that I'm right here.
Of course, the question comes. So how should we cope with that as a society?
We need to understand that every transformation, while it shuts some doors or closes some doors, shut, it also opens up new doors. So with the Industrial Revolution, the introduction of an electric motor created completely new jobs like factory managers, machine operators, and so on. We already have completely new jobs like AI governance experts. We have people who manage those tiny armies of algorithms and so on. That transformation is not going to be smooth. People will lose jobs, and for those we do need to work on good instruments that support them. Not every person can become an AI expert. Just like this lady, waking people up in London,
Mhm.
she lost her job. Look, she
Yeah.
she does lose her job. She did lose her job. Now, should we have stopped progress back then so that she could keep her job? I think everyone would probably agree that no, like ultimately it was a good thing, the progress, even though this particular lady became jobless. uh, and so we just need to think, how do we support those people who are pretty much victims of those transformation, but also understand that on a sort of broader societal level it's going to be good for all of us. So I think it's worth that additional investment to support those who miss out on the change.
And it shows again how important education is.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
to navigate that. Definitely. Coming up to an end because time is tight. You're up to your next appointment. That's why I'm so grateful that you squeezed us in. Where can we follow you? Because you have written lots of interesting books and you're quite active on LinkedIn. If somebody would like to get into Marek's world, what's the best way to get in contact with you or to get to know more about your work?
Oh, look, pretty much two places. LinkedIn is always best. Just look up my name and say hello, connect to me. Once you follow me, I think LinkedIn automatically signs you up for my newsletter that I write every. I wanted to say every week, but realistically, it's every couple of weeks or so. So LinkedIn definitely. I also have a Substack at Marek Kowal, MarekKowal.substack.com, which is the same newsletter that goes out through LinkedIn as well. So those two places really, I pop up in all sorts of places at conferences. I speak quite a lot, and in my newsletters, I always share the next 5 or 10 of my speaking gigs. So look for those. My book, The Economy of Algorithms, is available as an audiobook on Audible and also on Spotify. And I understand that if you're a Spotify Pro user, you could actually listen to it free of charge, which is, I have no idea how they're going to pay me for that.
I hope they will.
Me too. But yes, you can listen to my book as an audiobook free of charge, or just get it from Amazon, The Economy of Algorithms.
Perfect. Marek, was a fantastic hour with you. Thank you very much for this conversation.
Thanks for having me, Alex. I really love this conversation.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.